Welcome to Mythical Phylogeny Adventures. I'm your guide, Jason. Father's Day is fast approaching. So, I think we should take a look at one of mythology's most prolific fathers, and let's see if we can answer the question, was Zeus really that bad? I have said it many times now. When it comes to Greek mythology, there are two causes. Either Zeus, Poseidon, and Aphrodite couldn't keep it in their pants, or Hera, Athena, and Apollo are arrogant. So let's see what I mean about this. Of course, before we can talk about Zeus being a father, we need to talk about his father. I've gone over part of the story when I did Hades, but here's the full thing. He is the child of Kronos and Rhea, and he is definitely not a contender for the Father of the Year. He already had 5 other children, Hera, Demeter, Hestia, Poseidon, and Hades. Now there was a prophecy that one of his children would overthrow him, and this prophecy came from Uranus and Gaia, his parents, who he also deposed. I guess it's sort of a family tradition with them, as you will see. So, he did the only reasonable thing, which was to swallow his children whole. There is also a version where Kronos didn't swallow his kids, but threw Poseidon into the ocean and Hades into the underworld. But that is only one version and very rarely comes up. Rhea grieves the loss of her first 5 children. So, with the last one, she sought the advice of Gaia, also her mother. She gave birth in secret and gave the newborn to Gaia. When she returned home, she had wrapped a rock in cloth, which Kronos gulped down without a thought. Zeus was partially taken care of by several nymphs, and this probably didn't help his development. He was fed on the milk of the she-goat, Amalthea. An army known as the Charites would beat their shields with spears to cover the sound of Zeus's cries. And now we get to the Titanomachy, the legendary clash which overthrew the Titans from power. Zeus led the offensive, and forced his father to vomit up first the stone and then his siblings in reverse order. They would arm themselves in battle. Zeus would free the Cyclopses, who provided Zeus with his thunderbolts. For 10 years they clashed, until Zeus released the Hecaton cherries, the 100-handers, and this was the turning point in the war. After the war, there was disagreement about who should be ruling the gods. Zeus, Poseidon, and Hades each vied for the title, and they drew lots, with Zeus taking the sky and heaven, Poseidon drew the sea, and Hades got the underworld, and all below the surface. So, he got more than just the dead. Now, I want to ask you a question. Who is the wife of Zeus? And I am betting you said Hera. Well, you were actually partially wrong. Hera wasn't his first wife, that was Metis. She was a goddess of wisdom. Now, do you remember how I said that Zeus and his family had some strange family traditions? Well, Gaia let out a prophecy that his wife would give birth to a daughter. Then, there would be a son who was destined to overthrow him. So, Zeus took a page out of Kronos' book. But since Metis hadn't given birth yet, he beat her to the chase and swallowed her while still pregnant. How this happens varies with the tales. In one, he tricks her to turn into a drop of water, which he then drinks, before she can change back. In another, she fled and he hunted her down. In time, Zeus would develop a massive headache, and he asked Hephaestus to strike him in the head with an axe, and out popped his first daughter, Athena. Now, there is something I want you to remember with Zeus's prophecy. It said after his daughter was born, his son would overthrow him, but it didn't say who the mother was. So, there is a chance that the son was not Metis's, so keep that in mind. And Metis is still alive, trapped within Zeus's body. And Hera wasn't his second wife either, that was the Titan Themis. With her, they would have Horai. Some list the Morai, or the Fates, as their daughters, but that is inconsistent. Though this marriage would fail. Zeus would also sleep with the sea nymph, Eurynome, and they would have the Charites, Algia, Ephrosyne, and Thalia. And then we have his sister Demeter, who gave birth to Persephone. And for 9 nights, he would sleep with Munisyn, which would produce the 9 muses. And then we have the Titan Leto, which gave birth to Artemis and Apollo. So, before he even marries Hera, he's got a few kids. And with her, he added in 3 more, Ares, Hebe, and Eileithyia. Now, you may have heard of Hephaestus being Hera's child, but he is Hera's alone, no father in most takes. But the real story is how Zeus got her attention. He turned himself into a cuckoo bird and creates a massive storm. Hera comes to see what is going on, and Zeus, disguised as a bird, lands on her lap. And Hera lays her cloak over Zeus. He then transforms back and takes hold of her. She rejects him, but then he says that he will make her his wife. Okay, let's count. How many kids does Zeus have at this point? 1 with Metis, at least 1 from Themis, another 3 from Eurynome, Demeter gave him 1, 9 muses, and 2 from Leto, then 3 from Hera. So at this point, we have 20 children. Oh, and there are even more stories that he's the father of Aphrodite, but that is inconsistent. And then we get to his mortal affairs. Usually, he relies on his shape-shifting skills to get with the mortals. And we get some morbid ones. We have Callisto, who runs with Artemis, so Zeus disguises himself as Artemis to force himself on her. But others say he took the form of Apollo. Now Artemis is one of the 3 virgin goddesses, and her followers had to follow that rule. So afterwards, Callisto got expelled and then turned into a bear. Then she was slain by her son Arcas, but he has others also listed as his parents. Other accounts say that Hera is the one that turned her into a bear, and then convinced Artemis to shoot her. Afterwards, Callisto became the constellation Ursa Major. With Leda, Zeus would take the form of a swan, and this brought about Helen of Troy, and thus leads us into the Trojan War. And for Antiope, he took the form of a satyr, and that brought about Amphion and Zethus. And then we get Europa. She was out picking flowers when she sees a bull who is really Zeus. He snatches her up and carries her off to the island of Crete before he retakes his true form and sleeps with her. Thus we get King Minos, the king of Crete. Now Queen Alcmena was a little different. She was married to King Amphitryon, who was away at the time. And Zeus disguised himself as her husband to seduce her. From this, she would have twins, Iphiclus, who was mortal and not Zeus's child, and his much more famous brother Heracles. Oh, and these two are also the descendants of Perseus, who was also Zeus's son with Dione. For her, he took the form of a shower of gold while she was locked up in a tower. And this isn't all of them, not by a long shot. So, why is it he takes the form of animals? I mean, he is a literal god. Does that not sound like a massive statement when you are approaching women? Have you seen how girls act with rock stars and professional athletes? We literally see girls throwing themselves at celebrities. And what would be a bigger celebrity than a god? Well, do you remember the second cause of Greek myths? Hera, Athena, and Apollo are arrogant. And Hera is Zeus's wife. And Hera is known to be jealous and vain. Majorly jealous. Just look at poor Io. And this one is bad. She was a priestess of Hera, Zeus's wife. And she gets mad when Io sleeps with her husband. She turns her into a cow, which is then stung and bitten by flies until she flees clear to Egypt. Only then does she get to turn back to human. And now we have Semele. Zeus promises to do anything she wants, and Hera gets involved. Hera convinces her to have Zeus appear in his true form, a form which he only comes to Hera in. Upon seeing his true form, she is blinded and reduced to ash. And then there is Heracles, where she made his life hell. So, the reason that Zeus had to appear as animals and husbands is to avoid Hera's wrath. Just a few stories there, and I am sure that you can see how bad she can be. And I don't want to even think about what his married life was like. I mean, Hera is a pretty nasty person throughout the myths. Usually, she's the villain in Greek mythology. She even sided with the gods of India when Dionysus went to war with them. Oh yeah, Dionysus is another son of his. Yeah, I'm sure she was a nag and didn't like being outshone by her husband. Yet, he definitely wasn't a good husband. Even before Hera, he was having affairs with multiple wives, which ended poorly. Remember how he was raised by nymphs? Well, the word nymphomaniac comes from nymphs, and they are kind of known for sleeping around. So it's not entirely his fault. It was part of the culture which he was raised. Still, he had many affairs. And there is another reason behind many of these trysts. And her name is Aphrodite. Yeah, she loved creating trouble for Zeus and the gods. Yet, what about the prophecy of his downfall? Well, it was said to be his son, which never appeared. But there were some stories that he did eventually step down willingly and gave his throne to a younger god, usually Athena. However, I want you to look at the source of the prophecy, Gaia, Zeus's grandmother, who has actually been behind all the upheavals and rebellions amongst the gods and titans. Yes, she did, and she planted the idea that Zeus was to be overthrown. So, could she have lied and set things into motion? Was she really a god of chaos and discord, and not one of the earth? Maybe? Now, I've never actually said what Zeus is the god of. He is the god of lightning and thunder. And it is the Cyclopses and Hephaestus who make his lightning bolts, which he throws around. And he had many targets. Amongst the biggest was Typhon, who is the child of Gaia and Tartaros. This was a giant monster with serpents for legs, wings, the heads of many beasts covering its body, and it reaches from one horizon to another. So it's big, but did actually kick Zeus off his throne for a while. But with the help of Heracles, he got it back. Now, you know the gods live on Mount Olympus, but Kronos lived on Mount Othrys. Yeah, Zeus moved them. Lastly, there is some confusion with Helios, the sun god. You see, Helios is described as the eyes of Zeus, and Zeus is said to be sun-eyed. So there is some confusion, but they are different. There's a bit to Zeus to be sure. He is more than a horn dog and a cheater, and he appears in many other myths. Some we have covered in part on other videos. Yes, he did have a lot of children, many more which I haven't touched on, and many who were minor ones. So yes, he wasn't a great man, but he did help out many of his children, and he did play favorites too. So your call here. Thank you for watching, adventurers. Please return next time. Until then, I'll see you on the roads.